Hello, and welcome to Sir Atkinson's Film Club with me, Sir Atkinson. Someone from within the industry talking about the industry, all things reviews, hypothetical questions, maybe a bit of news, and hopefully some interviews as we go further on and grow the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Licorice Pizza. Now, Licorice Pizza is a Paul Thomas Anderson film that I was a bit excited about. It has a little bit of buzz around it, and I caught it this week, so I thought let's do a review and start the channel with that. Before we do start the review though, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. I've been in the film industry for nearly a decade. I've worked on some of the biggest films around, Spider-Man's, a couple of Spider-Man movies actually, Morbius, Men in Black, Charlie's Angels, lots of different movies over the years, as well as a load of movies you won't have heard of, TV shows, for everything from Cobra Kai to The Wheel of Time, been involved with a lot of different things, and hopefully give an insight through this channel that you might not get elsewhere. Licorice Pizza, so let's get into it. Paul Thomas Anderson's a guy who's been making movies since 1988 at some level. Made some huge movies you'll know, such as There Will Be Blood with Daniel Day-Lewis. He had Inherent Vice out a couple of years ago, but personal favourite of mine is Boogie Nights. My early 20s, me and my friends used to play that movie over and over again. It was hilarious but funny, and apparently very true to the scene. Licorice Pizza is set in 1973 in the San Fernando Valley. Before I do delve deeper into Licorice Pizza, I do have something to ask you. Could you hit that like button for me, please? It really helps the algorithm, and if you like the content, please subscribe. Use the comments section. Let's engage with each other. That's what I want to create, a little film club, a little film community where, who knows, in future we could start discussing more and more movies. We can look into content together, and who knows, we could catch a couple of pictures. So please just hit that like button, give it a little nudge for me, and let's see where we get with this. This is the first video actually that I'm creating, and you know, I really enjoy film, and I hope you do too, and I hope that's why you're here. So wouldn't it be great if we could all just discuss that together? Licorice Pizza is a movie that's not like anything he's done in the past, in that it's a bit of a love story with somewhat of a moral twist, which we'll get into in a little. First thing I want to say about this movie is how beautifully it's shot. Now that's down to mainly probably the cinematographer, who is, you know, it's credit to Paul Thomas Anderson himself, but also Michael Bauman, who's predominantly known as a gaffer on numerous movies. You should check him out on IMDb. If you're looking for an escape from the escapism that is superhero movies, which, you know, I certainly have a place in cinema. I'm a fan of some, but you know, it can get a bit too much and you want a human piece, then this could be the movie for you. This movie has a forced sense of nostalgia pumped into it, and that's not a negative. That it puts you exactly in 1973, what I imagine the San Fernando Valley was like at that time. Certainly from my time spent in and around Greater LA and California in general, it just feels like you're there, and that's exactly what you want from a movie like this. The music is true to the time, and the costume is absolute nail on the head stuff, which is great to watch, and I'm really enjoyed just absorbing myself into this movie from the start. I do of course have some issues with the movie, which I'll get into in a bit. We're using the very sophisticated medium of the good, the bad and the verdict. Typical film review stuff there. So, the good. This movie was acted with total finesse. These guys are talented, and you know, they're not seasoned actors in the sense of being around Hollywood for years and years. Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman, who play the two leads in the film, and comes across great in the movie. As does Alana Haim, underachieving, aspirational, somewhat floundering 25-year-old female who probably 15-year-old child star. Now, obviously, a 15-year-old. This film at its best is a forbidden love story between a 25-year-old female and a 15-year-old boy. But we'll get into that in a little bit. The love and the sexual tension and admiration of each other really comes across in this movie. That it's acted so well that you actually feel yourself pushing aside society's norms and rooting for actually what would be, you know, quite an eyebrow raiser, to say the least, if not criminal. But you're rooting for them, and that's down purely to the way it's been shot by the cast and crew, obviously, but predominantly to the way it's been acted. And the two leads in this movie really put their finger on the pulse of what is forbidden love, if you like, in this will they, won't they movie. As I mentioned earlier, this movie is shot in California, and you can really feel that warmth, that Californian warmth, the heat rising off the pavement, then that lighting that you only see, or you feel like you only see in California, and it's shot perfectly for that. Costumes are great from the start, and Mark Bridges, who's headed up the costume department, has done a great job, and it's absolutely noteworthy. It really feels like you're there, and it's not. Sometimes you can watch a movie and you're watching it and you're like, this is a really good imitation of the 1970s. This actually felt like you're in the 1970s. Not that I was there, obviously. So this is an imitation of the 1970s that I think is what the 1970s would feel like. The costume department, headed up by Mark Bridges, really pinpoint what the 1970s look like, what 1973 felt like. Also, it matches the way the movie's shot, which, you know, is a difficult thing to pull off and is definitely noteworthy. So the costume department did a great job, as did everyone making this movie. This is surgical movie making in my eyes. It takes you somewhere. It's not trying to mimic the 70s. It wants to be 1970s, and that comes across, and it makes you feel like that as a viewer, which is something that's difficult to achieve from someone who's worked in the industry. Sometimes you can be working on set and it's like, this is a good mimicking of a 1970s, or feels like a really good imitation of a period piece. Well, this, when it's really good, this feels like this is this period in time, and the team have done brilliantly here, and I think it really shows. So if you're looking, you'll get some appreciation if that's what you're looking for. Alana, who is 25 years old, living with her parents, is a bit of an underachiever. She's got aspirations to get other places in life, but is working jobs that aren't really going to get her there. So she's trying to figure that out. Bumps into our 15-year-old male lead, Cooper Hoffman, who is he's a child star. He's got a bit of swagger. He's got the confidence that goes with that, and he becomes a little bit infatuated with her from the start, which is, you know, it plays, and the way this movie goes, at first there's an infatuation, then they actually get into business together, which hits literal speed bumps, which is fun to watch. Then there's a sort of separation period. And obviously, I'm not going to spoil anything. It's an American cinema release, so we know that they obviously get together at the end. Otherwise, it would never get released. This all plays out, and despite some of the problems I have with the movie, which I'm going to bring up next, is not taken away from it whatsoever. It plays, and it plays well. I think it's fair to say that neither lead are classically attractive in Hollywood terms, and that isn't a criticism. It adds a charm to the movie, actually. If you'd picked the two best looking actors available, then I don't think this story would have played the way it does play, and that's well. Another thing worth mentioning about this movie are the cameos. Now, for me, a cameo, when dropped in right, picks the pace up of the movie or adds a certain flavour and should be character based. This is one of them movies. It uses cameos in an efficient and excellent way. The Bradley Cooper, he plays his part excellent, and certainly adds a certain comedy / spice to the movie. Tom Waits, Sean Penn, and DiCaprio. Not the DiCaprio you're probably thinking of when I say that name. In fact, I'm sure you're not. But George DiCaprio, Leo's dad. I actually met George DiCaprio one time at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's premiere in London. I was attending and got chatting to a few people upstairs. And, you know, it's a champagne event, looking the part, and there was a guy, and he was very charismatic, and I was chatting to him, and he came off like a real, you know, someone who draws in attention without trying. And I left, and one of my friends said, "Oh, do you know who that was? That's Leonardo DiCaprio's dad." So it's quite interesting that it came up in this movie, because it always left me with an impression of that guy has an aura, that guy is charismatic. It's obviously been inherited by Leo, and then times 10 probably, but the part he plays in this movie, or the cameo, which is quite interesting. The part George plays in his cameo is a waterbed salesman in California, and apparently, although I'm sure he wasn't cast for this reason, in fact I've been told he wasn't, that Cooper Hoffman comes in, and in fact their business that they start is all waterbed sales related. and George plays this part great. And considering I don't, as far as I know, he doesn't have an acting background. His IMDb doesn't seem to show that. And he plays the part great. He's got that salesman-esque look about him, and it's another cameo dropped in that doesn't need to be a name, and the fact that it is just coincidental actually, but he really nails the part. So we spent a bit of time discussing what I like about the movie, and I mentioned I do have some points. So let's get to it. The bad. Okay, so you're sitting down in a movie theatre, you're looking forward to a movie that's very, like a human story, you got your popcorn, you're getting slightly annoyed about people chatting in the credits, movie starts and you're enjoying it, it sucked you in. Everything's been shot perfectly, but there's a nagging feeling. And it's a big but, we're watching a movie with a female paedophile and a minor. Now, I don't know how that made it. Didn't feel right with me, and I know there's that archaic thought of, well, it's the female who's the lead, but it something did constantly play in my mind, partly because none of her friends seem to pull her up on it. Now, if you're the 15-year-old guy and you're telling your friends that you're dating an older woman, you wouldn't expect teenage boys, but she was a functioning 25-year-old lady in this movie who had friends, and no one seemed to pick her up on that. Now, I know we can't judge today's morals and standards by the past, but I do think that it's not that far in the past, and if they cast her as a 19-year-old, I think it would play better, and the reluctance for her to take that step, the next step with a 15-year-old, I think might have played a little bit truer. I know my group of friends probably would have said something to me at 25, stop chasing that 15-year-old and get a job and start a family, you creep. So that does play in your mind, and throughout the movie it did pop up in my head thinking it's not very true to life. If you can overlook this part of the movie, and I can, this movie's good, and in fact in some parts it's great, the way they bounce off each other, and the fact that there is a reluctance for Alana to get with Cooper, it really works. And in fact, ultimately what you're watching is probably something that has happened over the years, right or wrong, and that's what storytelling is, and this tells that story. Another point that I have, which is fairly minor but it did get a little bit annoying and strange, was the relentless running scenes that happen throughout this movie. I know it's probably a metaphor for time passing, but in the movie it didn't seem like time passed enough to have these long running scenes that would stand for that. Also, if you add to the fact that these two people aren't that athletic and they were never escaping parts of the scene where they were running that necessitated two adults running around relentlessly, it really got to me. In fact, in the running scene in the third act got a chuckle out of me, so who knows, maybe that was the point, to add a little bit of levity, but it seemed to be never ending, and the slow-mo of them running through the streets of LA for no real reason and wearing the clothes that they wear just seems strange to me. But like I said, that's such a minor fact and certainly doesn't pull away from the movie. So the verdict. This, like I said, is great in parts, and it's a solid movie. Shot well, acted well. It's probably going to get some nominations. I don't see it winning any of the big nods, but it might pick up some nominations because it really is that good in parts. The acting especially carries this movie from a stay at home and wait for this movie to stream type of movie to let's buy a ticket and watch this movie at the cinema. In fact, I personally think that you would lose some of that Californian filming and the way it's shot if you don't go out and buy a ticket. You certainly feel like you're part of the movie, you're witnessing this. Sometimes that's lost, especially at home. This isn't a film for the action-only fans or the people who only turn up to cinemas to watch people in capes, which is fine, but this isn't that type of movie, so maybe give this one a miss. The way I like to rate a movie is a little less 5-star and a little bit more pragmatic. So, rush out and see it now. If you're stuck for something to see this. Stay at home, wait till it comes on the TV, or maybe avoid it altogether. I would certainly put this in the camp of I've went to the cinema and a little bit undecided take a chance on this movie. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised. Certainly if you're into the art of filmmaking, I think you'll really like this movie. Licorice Pizza is a movie that I'm glad I bought a ticket for. So I really suggest before it turns off the screens, you go and buy a ticket too. So tell me what you think, leave a comment, and if you haven't liked, give it a nudge, please. Licorice Pizza is a movie that I'm glad I bought a ticket for. I really think that I would have lost out by seeing it at a later date, so I suggest you do too. Now, if you appreciate filmmaking and if you're a fan of Paul Thomas Anderson, then definitely go and see it. It's great old school cinema that is becoming rarer on the big screen, so take the opportunity and go and buy the ticket. Is it going to be classed as a classic? Probably not. It's not something that I think I'm going to rewatch anytime soon, but I'm certainly glad I saw it, and that's what art's about, right? Paul Thomas Anderson has once again created something that's conversation worthy. It's different to what else is out at the moment, so that's a big selling point to me. It plays around with your emotions, actually gives you some inner dilemmas, like as I've mentioned in the review. Despite what I said in some of the negative comments around this that I had, I actually feel that this portrays a little bit of life through the lens of someone who is in love or has feelings towards someone that really shouldn't, and the camera picks that up. You're watching it through the lens of these two people. So sit down and experience the first love through the lens of a somewhat misguided woman and a teenage man. Now I use the term man on purpose here. If you see the movie yourself, I think you'll see why I've used it instead of teenage boy. But these are just my thoughts from someone in the industry. What do you think? I'm really interested to engage and let's have some dialogue around this movie. I really want the Sir Atkinson Film Club to become somewhere where people who are into movies, all different types of movies and TV, let's engage and let's have a conversation. Let's share some ideas of what we could make videos from, what would you get value from, what I could do better. This is early days and I really want, like I said, the film club to become a little hub for people like you and people like me to discuss movies. By doing that, if you just hit like, subscribe to the channel and let's grow and let's see what... I really hope the Sir Atkinson Film Club becomes somewhere where we can have conversations on film, we can chat. I certainly want to have conversations with you. And if you like it, hit subscribe, hit me on my social media, at Sir Atkinson, and let's talk from there and let's make some content together. This thing is a group and I really see it that way. I really enjoy movies and I hope that comes across by me talking to you guys about it. Anyone who's here watching now, I just want to say a big thank you. This is my first video and hopefully it will get bigger and I hope to get better. So thank you very much. Stick around and please hit the subscribe and don't miss my next video. I hope to put something out each week and let's grow the community together. Much love.